CMJ's Epic Quest. 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 CMJ's Epic Quest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Jay Rule, and alongside me here is
Derek Cronus. We are here for round two. Fight!
Refight. Yeah, it's weird. This is the first time in our podcast history where we've had to re-record both of our stuff. There was one episode in the early Dead House Gates where I had to re-record all my lines.
It wasn't all of them, was it? It was just like a section,
No,
wasn't
it was
it?
literally the whole episode that I had to re-record.
Oh, I remember there was something. But...
Yeah. But I'm wondering now if like the editing tricks that I know now would have helped with that. So I guess, you live and learn.
Maybe, yeah. But I don't know. It's one of those things. Learn from it. And I don't really feel like it's anything we should hide, but it was a bummer for sure, but we get to talk again. So
right, exactly. This will be our sixth episode in the bank.
Something like that.
We've got Curse. We got another Curse episode that I'm working on. That'll unfortunately be the last one until you return. Then we have Chapter 5, which is our mammoth. Yep.
Yeah.
We have Chapter 6. We have the wrap-up episode. And then we have your Chris Benning. There's a little side quest, so to speak.
Yeah, that was a good talk. It was fun talking to him.
Yeah.
Feels like a long time ago already.
I know. It definitely does. But anyway, how you been?
Pretty good. I know we were talking about recording this a couple days ago, but yeah, one of my buddies was at least unexpectedly to me. He was back stateside. He's in the Navy and he's been in Japan for like 4 or 5 years, and he got a month of leave and came back home. So him and his daughter came to my hockey game Sunday morning, and then we went out to lunch and watched like the first half of the Vikings game with him with the rest of his family. So yeah, it was good to catch up with him and see him again before he heads back over to Japan. Oh
yeah, I was really surprised at that Vikings game. I was very, very surprised.
Yeah, watching the first half, maybe we didn't even watch all of it because he's got his daughter that came with my hockey game. She's 13, and then he's got like a 5 and 3-year-old, and toddlers at a restaurant. It's kind of tough sometimes. So
yeah,
I don't remember where we left in the game, but I said to him like, "We're not winning this game," and he's like, "Yeah, I don't think so either." But it was surprising. I caught the end of it on the radio. Well, I didn't even catch the end of it on the radio. I turned it on, and they were on like the post game show. So that was how I heard that we won.
Awesome. Yeah.
How you been?
I don't know. I'm a little grumpy today. I don't know why. Just grumpy. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this again.
We'll get the grumps out there.
Yeah. Get to talk some Malazan.
Always a good time.
Yeah. But before we get started in today's episode, we would like to take a moment to thank and recognize Silverstone's Books. Please go check out their website at silverstonesbooks.com, where they have a large selection of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror books, and with the option of many of them being signed copies at pretty decent prices. The store carries a large number of indie authors, so help us help them in supporting self-published authors. Also, they've been gracious enough to give us a promo code for 10% off your next order. The code is DJ Quest, so check out their site and pick up a book and save a little cash while supporting authors. Also, they do have a storefront coming out. I can't remember exactly, but by the time this episode airs, I would imagine that their storefront will be ready. I don't know if that code will be good physically in the physical store as well, but always give it a try, I guess.
They opened today, actually.
Oh, well, congratulations on Silverstone's Books for completing a milestone. So,
yeah, I asked how it went, and he said that they made enough to cover their next month's rent already.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So that's pretty awesome.
That is cool.
So it must have been a pretty good day.
Yeah, we definitely got to make it down there sometime. Maybe sometime in the new year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, not happening this month.
No, not.
Might be tougher on next month too with the holidays and everything. So
yeah, absolutely.
Before I shout out our patrons, I would like to shout out to both of our significant others, as they both allow us quite a bit of time in our, I won't say newfound hobby, but our hobby here in podcasting, our journey through these books. We dedicate quite a bit of time to doing this, whatever the time it takes to record, which we've set the bar up now to 6.5 hours on our longest one. I mean, most of the time it's probably a minimum of 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then, whatever time you dedicate to editing, if you're typing up your summaries at home, I would say most episodes between the two of us, between recording, editing, summarizing, we probably put 12 hours combined into most episodes, if not more.
Yeah. A week.
So on top of a week on top of having jobs, kids and activities and everything else, it's a lot, and it puts extra pressure on them. Keeping house in order, all that other type of stuff that, we're subtracting our time from to help out with. So
Right.
I just want to thank both of them for continuing to let us pursue this.
Very well said, sir. Very well said.
Yeah. I know sometimes you've got Danny there and she may or may not hear us when we record. My wife probably will never hear it unless I've got it on in the car. And she usually doesn't like listening to it. So
She not a fan of your voice or what?
I think she's not interested. I don't think it has anything to do with voices. She's just not that interested. Not her thing, which is fine. So
maybe she should check out your epic voice acting in Curse of the Fallen episodes.
yeah, she might not like my voice then.
Probably.
Well, our patrons, our lovely patrons, we've got Jan, the picker of pies, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan, the topological, Damien, the rock of faces, Nate, fiddle me this, Shield, Anvil Dylan, and I think actually last time we recorded this, I got a message from David sometime shortly after that. But he does have a nickname that he wanted us to use. Give me 1 second. I forgot about it till right now.
Me too, man.
All right. Let's see. David the Watch Mullally. So that's ominous sounding. I wonder if that's a Malazan thing or something else. But we do have that updated into, I don't know, we're out of Deadhouse Gates. We don't have a chain of dogs, so into our Book of Dredjana. I don't know. What do you think there?
I think we could still call it the Chain of Dogs. I mean, the only other thing that comes to my mind is the Tenaskauri, but that's not really good.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't think, I'm going to just assume that they probably don't want to be associated with them.
No, I wouldn't. I don't think anybody in their right mind would. I mean, they kind of seem like they're forced to, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for your patronage, your support. It means a lot to us, and we're happy to have you on board, and hope you guys are enjoying everything that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you again. All right. Chapter 6 epigraph here. Where they tread, blood follows. Kulbarat's vision. Haral Thum, B1134.
What do you think that B stands for? You think it stands for like burn?
I think so.
Burn sleep?
I think so, yeah. Or potentially something else that we haven't gotten involved yet.
Could be, yeah.
But I find it interesting that this epigraph says blood follows. And after reading this chapter, I definitely think that this makes a lot of sense now. But I also kind of wondering if this is maybe what potentially inspired him to start the novellas. I'm not sure if that was something that he had planned before writing this book, or if it was chapters like these where he's like, oh yeah, I could totally like make short stories out of this stuff.
You know what? We have a document of questions, right, for this book. I think you should put that down because that would be, I think, a good one to ask Mr. Erickson. Because I know I feel a little bit differently on this particular one, and it could pertain to that, to what you're thinking. Just after reading this chapter, I kind of feel like it's talking about the Kachain, Shamal, where they go, blood follows.
Right.
Is kind of my thought, but I like your idea too. I think it's cool. I think we should ask him. Or you should ask him, rather. It's your question.
For sure. Yeah, I guess what do you say? Should we kick off section 1 here?
Yeah, I will take it away here. Saltone's Sunset Gate was accessible by a causeway over the canal. The bridge and the canal had both seen better days. Saltone was one of the Vision Plains' oldest cities and was once along the coast of the Catlin River. Life was good until the course of the river changed over the span of a particularly rainy spring. The canal was built to try and maintain the trade they were accustomed to. The success was marginal and short-lived. Gruntle scowled as he led his horses across and saw the city's low walls with brown stains. They could smell the raw sewage as they looked at the figures manning the battlements, though few were actually soldiers. Their fabled horse guard had been sent north to join Caladan Brood to fight the Malazan Empire. What was left wasn't worth the polish on their boots. He looked back at his master's carriage and saw Harlow waving like a lovable idiot, while Stoney cursed like a sailor. Looking back at the gate, Gruntle noticed no guards, and that the gate had been left wide open and hadn't looked like it had been closed in quite some time. He slowed down, and the carriage pulled up next to him. Stoney asked if they were only passing through to the Sunset Gate. Gruntle said that's what he advised. Stoney asked what the point of this long experience was if their master wouldn't listen to Gruntle's advice. This was spoken loud enough for Karuli to hear. As they approached the gate, the alley narrowed while the buildings overhead also narrowed, the two sides nearly touching at the top. Gruntle put himself ahead of the carriage. Harlow said they'd be scraping the sides any second. Gruntle said if they can manage twist-face passage, they would be fine. One of them said that was a big if, and there was plenty enough to pass on the walls for grease. The neighborhood here had a wrecker's mentality. Any stuck wagon was free game, and they weren't afraid to swing a sword to get what they wanted. 6 or 7 years ago, Gruntle had to spill blood, and as he remembered it, it was a messy night. Gruntle and his men had killed half the citizens on the block before they were able to back the wagon out. He didn't feel like repeating that night. They scraped the sides a few times, but once they were through, it was all clear and made their way into Woo's Closet Square, created by 13 streets that all met in the square. Gruntle told Stoney to take Mucusson Street. She said she remembered the way and that this place smelled like shit. Gruntle still led the way and noticed there was no other traffic, and that wasn't a good sign. Harlow called out to Gruntle. He said the kids had vanished. Gruntle told Harlow to load his crossbow, which he said was already done. He knew, but he wanted to announce it anyways to anyone who might be in earshot. 20 paces ahead, 3 figures emerged. A woman called out knowing exactly who all 3 were, and that she still may lay her heart at Stoney's feet. Gruntle greeted the woman. He knew her name, Nectara. He asked her what the toll was. She said there was no toll. They were simply there as an escort. Gruntle turned as he heard the carriage door open, and Master Karuli waved Gruntle over. He said they were to meet the city's rulers. Gruntle said the king and council. Karuli laughed and interrupted him, saying no, they were to meet the true rulers, and it was at great expense and fantastic negotiating. There was a gathering of all the holdmasters and mistresses to whom he would address this night. Gruntle asked why he didn't explain this all earlier. He said he wasn't sure the negotiations were successful, as it was a complex matter, so he must earn their trust. Gruntle wondered who he really was and said it was fine if he wanted to trust the criminals, but he and his crew would not. Curly said he understood. Gruntle told Nectara to lead on.
Nice little introduction to the chapter here. I liked the way that you kind of get a visual as you're entering the city. It definitely doesn't seem like it's been well kept.
Right. Yeah, it's seen better days from the sounds of it.
Right. And there's no like live-in protection either. It kind of sounds like the few soldiers that remained are, not really soldiers, but just kind of like, I don't know, police officers in training is kind of what it made me feel like, or what it made it seem like. So,
I feel like you're partially right. In my mind, I feel like it's probably like the men who are probably too old to go off to war and like young boys who are not old enough, they're not big enough to wear armor, to hold a weapon, that type of thing.
yeah, that seems like it could spell some trouble given all the activity that's been happening.
For sure. Yeah, it doesn't sound good. The blood follows thing in the epigraph, I feel like we've seen that phrase in, maybe, I don't remember if it was this book or Gardens of the Moon or Dead House Gates. Or maybe we haven't and I've just worked it into a summary or something, but it feels, that phrase feels familiar for whatever reason.
Yeah, I see where you're. I mean, I'm definitely second guessing as to whether we've heard it before or not. But I guess I'm inconclusive just as you are. So,
And I don't think it necessarily really means anything, but it does seem like an odd two words to put next to each other multiple times.
oh, for sure. But it's definitely intriguing. It's an intriguing phrase, right? Like, and it makes sense with some of the things that get brought up in this chapter. So, I think the epigraph, as short as it is, kind of captivates the essence of this chapter.
I thought you were going to say imagination.
That works too.
I don't think that's what you're going for, but for whatever reason, that was the word that popped into my head.
No, that's fine. But anyway, what were some of the things that you caught out here?
The brown stains on the wall. Like, do you think people are just shitting over the side of the wall? I mean, because they talk about the smell of raw sewage. So,
Yeah.
gross. I just imagine like what if you're like the dude walking up to the city? You're like a merchant. You got your wagon, and it's like sunrise, and you look at the wall, and there's just an asshole hanging off the edge of it at sunrise. Like, what a way to start your day.
Right, right. Well, back in the day, we'd always say like the best part of waking up is shit in your cup.
Wow, you're singing again.
Yeah, I know, right? I think that's a first for this episode or for this series. I think it's
I think so.
but
Maybe. I guess I don't remember.
yeah. Oh well, I don't know. I guess that's definitely an image that you've painted here. However, like I had more of like a rusted image. So I could have swore that when he was describing the rooftops, they were like tin, like a metal of some kind, and they're just rusting down on the walls. I guess I could be wrong.
I don't know. Someday, Justin, you're going to be looking at a castle and you're going to look at that wall and you're going to remember me saying that.
Yeah.
Just imagine an asshole hanging over the edge and you're going to be like,
I might take a picture
Derek,
of
you
this
son of a
castle
bitch.
and visually represent what you are saying.
all right.
Yeah.
I'm glad I put that visual in your head.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was, kind of weird when you're going through it for the first time, you're like, Stony is sitting here and she's going, well, why the hell doesn't our fucking master ever listen to us? And it kind of all makes sense when you read the end of this section, when Carulius is explaining that he's meeting the true rulers. So those two things can kind of tie in together a little bit, which I thought was some good clarity.
It's a good pickup.
Yeah.
Another one of my thoughts here, it talks about there being enough on the stuff on the walls to pass for grease. Is it just grease from other wagons over the years? Is it other substances? I don't know.
Do you think?
But it kind of leaves things to the imagination a little bit.
Well, I feel like grease gets brought up a lot in this chapter in various scenarios. Do you think that this is something that they do in preparation for Twist Face passage? Like they grease up the walls of the carriage?
Maybe if it was somebody who's been there before, somebody who hasn't maybe wouldn't know to.
Sure.
Unless maybe it's got a reputation. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, can you imagine just looking up and seeing all of the old grease that's just caked on? Like, I just imagine many layers of paint on top of each other. Like, if you were to have like a cutaway view of it and you could just see all the different layers of paint, I just kind of imagine that with the grease on these houses that essentially just kind of are not architecturally sound.
Yeah, it sounds like the house or building leaning the other way might be about the only thing keeping them upright.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's also kind of messed up, how everybody in this neighborhood just a stuck wagon is fair game, but also given what we know about the city without really being told about the city is that it seems like really poor and these guys are going to take what they can get and fuck, I mean a stuck carriage, hell,
It's like a gold mine,
right, prime for the
or
picking.
could be. Exactly. I think Gruntle and his story about 6 or 7 years ago when he had to kill all these people would be an interesting thing to hear more about. So I wonder if we'll get any more on that, or if that's just all we'll get. I think that's probably about all we'll get. I don't know that there's really going to be a reason.
Yeah, I would imagine. I think you're right. I don't think that they're going to go much deeper into that. I think it's just briefly explaining that Gruntle has experience in this particular city before, which is kind of the reason why Stoney gets a little upset and questions Gruntle as to why Karuli isn't even.
I could see that. I mean, yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting how this Wu's Closet Square was created by 13 streets that all meet, and I just thought, wow, seems a little excessive. There must not be much room between some of these streets if they're all meeting there, or it's a really big fucking square, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I guess both situations are possible, but I think it just kind of goes and accentuates the rundown nature of the city. It clearly doesn't seem like any of the city was planned. It just was haphazardly built wherever there was space. And this ended up being kind of a thing that just happened.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how many like cities, like they actually planned things out, the layout and stuff. Probably not many.
I would imagine that, yeah. I guess I don't know how all of that is done, but I would imagine that, there's a reason we pay taxes and some of that money goes to like city planning so that it's not a rundown piece of shit.
Well, I mean, we also don't live in a medieval-ish type fantasy world. But
yeah. That's also fair. That's true. But, I mean, sometimes stories are based on real life, right?
that's very true. Yes. My last thought for this section, I wonder about Stoney. She seems to have this reputation with Nectara, saying she may lay her heart at her feet. And I don't remember her being described as beautiful, but maybe she was. Or does she just have this like prowess as being, just fantastic in bed or something like that? I wonder what's so captivating and alluring about her.
Maybe both. I definitely think that based on the few characters that are lusting after her, mainly Harlow, but also now we have Nectara here. So it's one of those things where maybe she's just, I don't know. There's definitely a past there. There's definitely a history. I guess I don't recall her being described.
Yeah, I don't either. So just something, it's interesting to think on. Yeah, she's got multiple people pining after her. So
Right. I also thought it was funny that it kind of seemed like Stoney and Nectara were flirting a little bit in this scene because, Nectara's like, I lay my heart at your feet. And Stoney was just like, well, I don't tread lightly. So it was just kind of a funny little play on words. And I can imagine that she wasn't really taking it seriously, but at the same time was maybe just had this like air of sarcastic wit to her.
yeah, it definitely did seem that way.
So yeah, but yeah, I thought it was a pretty interesting opening to the chapter, and that's really all I had to say.
I am ready to move on here if you want to take your first section.
All right. It was said that Saltoan was a city of two hearts, both equally vile and corrupt. With his back against the wall, Gruntle looked out at the group of murderers, extortioners, and thugs. On Gruntle's left sat Stoney, and on Gruntle's right sat Harlow. Nectara had dragged a table and a chair and sat next to Stoney. On the table was a hookah. Nectara's left hand smoked the hookah, while her right hand had found Stoney's thigh. Karuli stood in the center of the room, facing the majority of the crime lords and ladies. He addressed the crowd and made his pronouncement. When he had concluded, there were murmurs of agreement. Gruntle almost smiled at the manners among these street killers. Glazing over to Stony, he saw, and with his eyebrows raised, Nectara's hand plunged underneath the pants of Stony near the crotch. Stony's face was flush, and she had a slight smile on her face and her eyes closed. Gruntle pleaded to the Queen of Dreams in his head, and then he reached for his glass. One of the mistresses growled and said that there should be a wholesale slaughter, and every one of those priests should be belly up. Karuli replied that they would just be martyrs, and such attacks were doomed to fail, as they have in other cities that have tried. Karuli went on to explain that the Panian Domin are spreading misinformation, a campaign of deception. The Panian Domin, for all its laws and order, is a tyranny, characterized by the cruelty of its people. Karuli says that they no doubt have heard the tales of Tenaskauri. All that they have heard has not been exaggeration. Cannibals and rapers of the dead. One man blurted out, "Children of the dead seed." The man asked if it was really true, and was it even possible? The women would descend upon the battlefield, and soldiers whose corpses were not yet cold. He trailed off, and Karuli could be seen nodding his head. Karuli explained that among the youngest of the Tenaskauri followers were children of the dead seed. He continues to tell everyone that within the Panian cities, the citizens are faithful, and all rights and privileges the priests speak applies to them. No one else can acquire citizenship. Non-citizens are treated less than the enslaved, for they are subjects. The Tenaskauri offers their only escape, the chance to match the inhumanity inflicted upon them. The citizens of Saltoan would lose their homes, denied food and water. Savagery would be their only path, as followers being sworn into the Tenaskauri. Karuli said that they must fight these lies with the truth and expose the lies of the Panian priests. Karuli lists off a set of skills and says that these were skills that all of them possessed. It was up to these murderers and thugs to drive away the priests of the Panian, not with fighting, but with words. A master asked how Karuli was so sure of this. Karuli responded by saying that failing would result in the Panian taking Saltoan. Karuli continued on, but Gruntle stopped paying attention and studied the man himself. He recollects his meeting of Karuli for the first time, and after thinking about that story, and at that time he thought that Karuli must have been a mage. Now, though, he was thinking that he was a priest, but to what god? His thoughts were broken by the word killings. The masters and mistresses were all talking amongst themselves. Gruntle straightened himself and leaned over to ask Harlow what they were talking about. Something to do with killings? Harlow explained that there had been unexplained murders the last 4 nights. He leaned back against the wall and his thoughts went to Corporal and Bauchelain's carriage, as it had moved unnaturally quick, and he wondered where it was camped, as it was too high and too wide to fit through some of the streets. He thought to himself that this was conviction enough for his dear friend Buke. First thing that I had here is when Karuli is making his announcement, he's specifically calling out the concerns of the Panian priests' increased visits to the city of Saltoan. So I think that, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that these city rulers, quote unquote, potentially had reached out to Karuli, or do you think it was the other way around?
I guess I'm not sure. I don't know that I really have a thought either way. I guess if I were, I would think it's probably more likely that Karuli reached out to them.
So you think he's just kind of on this mission to essentially spread information about the Panian Domin's misinformation?
Probably. I mean, because how would all these? Because these just sound like, yeah, they're like a bunch of like gang leaders. Essentially, is kind of what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
How would they know who Karuli is? So yeah, I think he probably reached out to them and is probably telling them like, hey, like these guys are here. They're showing up. They might promise you everything under the sun, but it ain't going to be good.
Well, it kind of sounds like he's got, I wouldn't say experience, but he definitely has some knowledge, because one of these mobsters, so to speak, these, gang leaders or murderers or whatever they they say all these priests should just be belly up, like we should just kill them all. And he goes on to say smartly that no, they'll just be martyrs of the cause. It's kind of one of those things where like other cities had tried it and that tactic failed, not because they were successful in killing them, but because those priests had become martyrs to the Panions' misinformation. Right. Or something. Yeah, exactly. So it's just really interesting how you kind of get the very like political nature here. But it also kind of makes me wonder why Caruli is doing this. And I think that just kind of plays into the mystery of who his character is at this point. Because we don't know much about him. Clearly this was I guess maybe not his first destination, but this is the first that we're hearing. And I think that this is definitely his quest, but why?
Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, but yeah, I mean, with what you're describing, I mean, as a reader, what I hear and what we can see is, the priests show up, promise them whatever they want to hear, I guess,
Right, essentially.
and then they end up as Tenascowry, or they kill these priests and they end up as Tenascowry.
Right. Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing.
Exactly. So it's, I mean, one of the two ways you don't see it coming, I guess. But
Yeah. One of the other things that I thought was interesting, and I didn't write this down as a comment by any means, but at the beginning of the section, it says that Saltone was a city of two hearts, both equal in vile and corruptness. So my guess is Caruli and Gruntel's conversation about like the true rulers, and then like my guess is that is one half of the two hearts in the city, and then I would imagine the other half is like nobility, royalty, and both equally are vile and corrupt. So that I'm guessing that's the reason why the city is in such disarray, is because these two equally vile and corrupt hearts are working for their own motivations and not anyone else's.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
So I just thought that was interesting, and I think it just kind of characterizes and encapsulates all of the things that we know about the city based on that first section, and just the disrepair and the grease and unplanned and unorganized way the city is laid out, etc.
Right. I think that's a good point.
I think this is kind of the first instance, I would say, in either of these books where we just kind of get an all-out public display of naughtiness, I guess you could say. Just straight up, right in the middle of this room, just getting finger banged,
Finger blasted to the moon, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Do you think it's like sticking your finger in the ocean?
I don't know, Justin. I don't know.
Fucking a bucket of water.
But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the horniness in this chapter.
Yes, definitely. The other thing that I thought was just really fucked up, and I don't know if I quite understand how one would go about accomplishing getting pregnant by a dead soldier, even if the body is still warm. Like, do they cut open the nutsack and just turkey baste the semen in there, or what? Like, I understand the logistics, and maybe it's because they haven't quite passed into Hood's Gate yet. They're just one last hurrah before they go out.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like
Danny's got the answer. Apparently, you can ejaculate after death.
Yeah, these ladies just come down and finish them off twice.
How do you get a boner?
Rigor mortis.
Yeah, but I mean,
you're already there.
aren't they their sexual organs? They have to be alive to do the.
No.
Justin, haven't you heard of rigor mortis?
I've heard of that, but I mean, like,
and then you stimulate that area, and then your body does the natural thing that it's supposed to do. Just because you recently died doesn't change that. Just like your brain stem, you know what I mean, is still functioning for a short period of time after you die.
Yeah, like 15 seconds.
Yeah, but
I mean, I guess sometimes that's all it takes, right?
but also, like, you should stop it.
Don't make fun of us, Justin. I don't know. I kind of wonder, like, maybe it's not, maybe it's guys who are just like on the verge of death. Maybe they're not like.
But there have been women that have gotten pregnant from dead bodies before.
Huh. Interesting.
It's fucked
I
up.
guess that's just something that I'm not gonna look up or Google. So, oh well, then there you go. There it is. Danny with the answer. We appreciated the girlfriends and the wives in the beginning of the episode, so there it is.
Yeah, probably more than you wanted to know on the subject. More than I didn't know that it actually happened in real life, but why should I be surprised about it?
Right? Yeah. Yes, people are definitely gross. All right. Cool. Well, I guess we can move on to the tennis gallery and how fucked up it is to know that there are children walking around from these dead soldiers in this like plague. Just messed up to think about,
Yeah, not great.
No, definitely not at all. What's also really messed up is the fact that the way the tennis gallery recruit is they just inflict as much inhumanity as possible, taking their homes, denying them food and water, and then eventually, your only way to survive is to essentially join in and do this to other people. It's a fucked up way to recruit, I guess.
Violence breeds violence, I think is the saying, or something along those lines.
I don't know how, like, if that happened to you, like, yeah, I guess, your need to survive is greater than running alongside the person that did this to you. Just such a weird thought. Like, I don't know how I would handle that. And the level of animosity I would feel, like, if I'm running alongside this person that stole my food and water and took my home, and now my only way to survive, like, don't you think that there would be a bunch of, like, violent scraps within the tennis gallery?
Maybe they do fight with each other. I don't know, but I mean, I kind of get the sense that these people are definitely like less than human now.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they can even really can they even speak anymore? Do you think or do you think it's just like grunts and groans and shit like that? Like
animalistic.
They just or lose themselves so completely that it's just animalistic.
Yeah, it's a good thought, but yeah, I just can't imagine how one would feel in that predicament.
Probably like shit.
Yeah. The other thing that I had here is just the mystery surrounding Karuli, and I know that we talked about a little bit ago. When Gruntle is recollecting his first interaction with Karuli, he thinks that he's a mage, but now he thinks that he's a priest, and he's kind of wondering, like, to what god. So do you think that it's possible that Karuli is acting on behalf of whatever this god is to spread the word? Kind of like a disciple of this god?
I don't know that I feel like any of the gods are like that. I don't know if good is the right word.
I mean,
but we're that good to do that.
I mean, I guess what would the gods be standing to lose if the Panion Domin takes over? It's a religious cult, right? So they're going to be forgotten, no? Kind of like K-Rool. Granted, that was a curse, but I mean, I can only imagine that there must be some truth to it, and that if you are forgotten, you essentially have no power, right?
I mean, I guess we've been given that impression. So I guess I don't have an answer.
Just shit that I'm thinking about, as I was going through these sections. So, and then the last thing that I had for this particular section was at the end when Gruntle is talking or thinking about how unnaturally quick Boshalane and Corporal Broach's carriage had gone, and kind of he has these thoughts based on the word killing after Harlow kind of explained that there were unexplained murders the last 4 nights. And I think I have to recant what I said in chapter 4 at the beginning, where Buke is telling Gruntle about seeing or hearing, or I can't remember the specific details, but he puts it together that Corporal Broach has been killing people. And so now we're in the second city. All of the same characters are there, and we've got more killing. So I know that in that episode, I had said that it was events that had happened at the end of Gardens of the Moon, but I think that that's incorrect now.
Yeah, I think it seems to make sense that it's those two.
Yeah.
Or, well, one of them doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all I guess I have for those sections. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to talk about.
Nothing additional, I don't think. No. I think you covered it well.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, we'll carry on. As Stoney poured herself another drink, she explained that she was just bored out of her mind, and Nectara managed to relieve some of that boredom, as well as likely for those who were watching. She called them all pigs. Gruntle said maybe she shouldn't have made it a public display. Stoney only said that they didn't have to watch, and what if she had a baby on her hip instead of her tit out? Harlow said he would have absolutely been looking then. She said he was disgusting, and Harlow went on to defend himself, as it wouldn't be her tits that drew his interest, but rather that she had a fucking baby. Gruntle spoke up, saying the meeting would take the rest of the night, and when morning comes, Curly would be the only one allowed to catch up on his sleep in his fancy carriage. Meanwhile, they had nearly clean beds, and he suggested they use them. Harlow said they were for sleeping. She replied that she would make sure to bar the door. Harlow kept pressing her, saying that Nectara probably had a secret knock. She told him to quit grinning or she'd knock it off his face. He asked her why she got all the fun. She oh so kindly called him a bleeding mongrel, or was it breeding? I think it was breeding. A breeding mongrel, and asked him what she had that he didn't. And that answer was an education. Curly came into the room and asked Gruntle if he had recruited the city's toughs to their cause. Curly said yes, basically, and that this war was fought on many battlefronts, and that this would likely be a long one. That's what she said. Gruntle asked if that's why they were going to Capistan. Curly said he had other business there, and their short stay here was merely incidental in the grand scheme of things. Gruntle felt nervous, and that if he asked any more questions, any more answers would probably make him more nervous. He thought to himself that Caruli could keep his secrets.
So definitely more mystery around Caruli here. I don't know if that means him being here is incidental or what. Do you think that he just, hey, we're on our way to Capistan, I might as well spread some word about how wrong the Panion Domin is?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you say it's incidental, it's probably actually not, right? Like, you just don't want to say why. So I'm sure he's got a reason. He just doesn't want it known. And maybe we'll find out more. Maybe we won't.
I mean, I definitely think that we will. I think that at this point, Caruli is probably going to be one of those characters in this book that just over time, slowly things reveal for him. So
I agree. And I think, like with Caruli, I mean, he almost seems a little shady, but, what kind of business would you have in a city that is in one of two states? It's either going to already be under siege when you get there, or once you get there, it's going to be under siege pretty shortly after that.
right.
So I don't know. I think he'll get there before they're under siege.
I think so.
But that's my guess.
I would agree with that.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Read and find out.
Read and find out.
My other thought on this section where Stoney asks Harlow what she has that he doesn't, and she says it's an education. And maybe she does have an education and he doesn't, but I don't know if that's really the answer that she's meaning.
No, probably not. But I mean, I guess it is possible, Gruntle has an education and maybe Harlow doesn't. And I don't know. I thought it was a nice quip. They seem to be bickering amongst themselves, and this just seemed to be a slap in the face. Because Harlow is saying that seeing her with a baby would be a surprise.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess, yeah.
No worries. But yeah, it was a nice little quick section. I definitely think it's kind of, moving from one story element to the next is kind of the purpose of this particular section.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on here if you are.
All right. The archway beneath the Sunrise Gate was dark. Waytown's shanty sprawl was visible just beyond. Gruntle nudged his horse into a trot as he rode into the sunlight. He had remained in Saltoan for 2 hours, lingering around the gate, while Harlow and Stoney drove the carriage out of the city. He judged that they should be about 2 leagues along the river road. Most of the banditry happened on this half between Saltoan and Capistan, just like Gruntle observed spotters on the west side of the city for those that were traveling to Jerujistan. He had waited to see if any local packs had made plans for Caruli's party, No one ever came, thus confirming his master's assertion that safe passage had been guaranteed. He worked his horse into a canter and left Waytown, rose clear of Shantytown and onto the Rocky River Road. Off to his left stretched the Vision Plain that reached out to the distant Bargast Range. There was no chance of getting lost as long as he stuck to following the river. Less than a league later, he came across corpses. Looked like the highwaymen had ambushed from a stream bed, surrounding their victims' carriage and moments. It seemed that the precise planning didn't work. The bodies were 2, maybe 3 days old, bloated and almost black under the sun. Their bodies scattered on both sides of the road. Swords, lances, buckles, and almost anything else that was metal had melted under some ferocious heat. A number of the bandits wore spurs, and there was no way one could get out here without a horse, but Gruntle could find no sign of them. Gruntle dismounted and wandered amongst the dead. He found the tracks of Caruli's carriage. It seems that they too had stopped to examine the scene. Caruli's tracks were overlaying a larger, wider carriage pulled by oxen. Gruntle observed that there was no visible wounds on the corpses. Gruntle thought to himself that he bet that Buke didn't even have to unsheath his sword. He climbed back onto his mount and resumed his journey. Half a league further on, he caught up to his companions. Harlow greets him and says that it was a fine day. Gruntle quickly replies and asks where Stony was. Harlow explained that she took a horse to scout up ahead and make sure the wayside camp was unoccupied. Oh, and here she comes. Gruntle greeted her with a scowl and reined in before them. He said that this was a damned stupid thing to do. Stony said that this whole journey was stupid, and there were 3 Bargasts at the wayside camp. She explained that Capistan was only days away from a siege, and maybe they could make it the walls in time. If we do make it in time, we'll be stuck there with the Panian army in between us and the road. If we don't make it there in time, then the Tenascauri will have their fun with us. Gruntle's scowl deepened, and he asked where the Bargasts were headed. Stony explained that they had come down from the north and were headed in the same direction as them. They want to take a look at things closer to Capistan. Don't ask her why, but we should let the master know. Caruli swung the carriage door open and said that his hearing was fine. He asked which clan they were from. Stony replied that they were white-faced, based on the paint on their faces. Caruli said that we shall invite them to travel with us. Gruntle attempted to say something, but then Caruli cut him off, saying that they will arrive in Capistan well before the siege. Caruli explains that the Septarch responsible for the Panians' forces was known to take a more methodical approach. He explained that once he has been delivered to Capistan, then all will be free to do as they please. Gruntle asked what would happen if the city was already besieged. Caruli said that he wouldn't have them lose their lives, and at that point would just ask to be dropped off outside the range of the enemy, and he would make his own way into the city. Gruntle asked how he would accomplish something like that. Caruli spoke and said that he has relevant skills. Inside his head, Gruntle wondered about that, but then asked if they were to bring the Bargast along with them. How could we trust them? Caruli replied that if they were untrustworthy, then it would be good to have them around to keep an eye on them. The captain said that that was a good point. Stony, with some short words, said that this was insanity. She turned her horse around. Gruntle, with a grimace, watched her ride off. Harlow said that she was a treasure. With a sigh, Gruntle said that he'd never seen the man so love-struck before. Harlow said that it was unobtainable. He dreams of her and Nectara, with him snugly between them. Gruntle told him to stop it, as it was making him sick. Caruli awkwardly said that he would return to his carriage now. The 3 Bargasts were clearly siblings, with the woman being the oldest. White paint had been smeared on their face, giving their faces a skull-like appearance. They were dressed in armor and had a guard's block worth of weapons. The 3 Bargasts stood on the other side of a stone fire pit. Gruntle's gaze found the woman Bargast, and he spoke, saying that their master invites them to join, and would she accept? She glanced at the carriage and said that few traders still journey to Capistan. After a moment's pause, she said that the trail has become perilous. Gruntle frowned and asked if the Panians had sent raiders across the river. She replied and said that she hasn't heard of that, but demons stalk the wildlands, and they were here to discover the truth about them. Inside his head, he curses, but then asks when they learned of these demons. She shrugged and said about 2 or 3 months ago. The captain sighed and then slowly dismounted. He said then to let us hope there's nothing to these tales. The Bargas woman said that she hoped otherwise, and introduces herself as Hatan and her 2 miserable brothers, Gafal and Natak. She explains that this was Natak's first hunt since his death night. Grunta looked at the glowering, hulking youth and said that he's beaming with excitement. Hatel said that he had sharp eyes. Gruntle thought to himself that great. Another humorless woman for company. Stony unmounted and told Hatan to ignore Gruntle and his terrible jokes, unless you enjoy being confused. Hatan said that she likes to kill and ride men. Harlow, after this, climbed down from the carriage and introduced himself to Hatan. He said he was delighted to meet her. Stony said to the Bargas that they could kill Harlow anytime they liked. Definitely a very interesting section to this chapter. First thing that I thought was cool is that Gruntle, on their way in to Saltoan from Jerujistan, had observed spotters that are basically kind of looking out for travelers going from Saltoan to Jerujistan. He's essentially just kind of waiting for these events, but they never come. And inside of his head, he's like, "Oh well, shit! I stand corrected. Then I guess we do have safe passage, and it was guaranteed." So I thought that was just really cool.
Well, you got to take your precautions.
Right. Absolutely. The other thing that I thought was cool was just the way that everything was explained about the vision plane. Granted, I did not do it justice in the summary, but it was just cool to think about the way that it was described, this like grassland mixed with prairie, mixed with like a dry riverbed, rocks, stones, and then like a mountain range. So it was just a nice visual.
A little bit of everything there, seems like.
Yeah. And then when he comes across the corpses, he notices that all of the metal had melted under some ferocious heat, as well as the bodies themselves seem to be really charred. So it sounds like they were killed with like a heat or a fire, is my guess.
Do you think it was like dragon fire?
No, I think it was like sorceress fire.
Okay.
My guess is that they attacked Boshalan and Corvo Broach, is my guess here.
That's a good point. It's been a little bit since I've read this chapter, so.
Yeah, because they say when he's observing Caruli's tracks, they were overlaying a larger, wider carriage pulled by oxen. And from what I understand, that's definitely Boshalan and Corvo Broach's carriage. So that's what I think, that these bandits just messed with the wrong people.
Good point.
My next thought is, again, Caruli seems to know an awful lot of the Panion Domain. He's explaining that the Septarch responsible for the Panion's forces was known to take a methodical approach. And I just kind of wonder if that's widespread knowledge or if that's something that Caruli just knows. Like, I almost kind of wonder if Dujek or Brood are aware of this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I just thought it was an interesting factoid. And then also when kind of Caruli's explaining that, once they get to Capistan, they will all be free to do what they want. I've kind of got the feeling that Gruntle and Stony and Harlow will kind of get caught up in something else. What exactly that is, I guess it's too early to tell, but I don't think they're going to be doing it.
I think they'll get drug into the siege of the city, defending the city. That's my thought.
That's what I think too. But somehow I think he's going to end up with like either Brood or Dujek or the Bridge Burners.
Good thoughts.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was funny is just this interaction with Harlow and Gruntle when Gruntle's like, "Oh, I've never seen you so love-struck before." And Harlow's just like, it's just because it's unattainable. And that he dreams of Stony and Nectara snuggling between him. It was funny. And I know that I said that they could be siblings in an earlier episode, but I don't think that anymore.
He wants that Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, he wants that devil's three-way, right? No eye contact.
Isn't that two guys? The devil's one?
Devil's three-way. I don't know.
I
I'm
thought
not
that
sure.
was two guys.
I don't know. A devil's three-way insinuates three people.
Right. I just thought it was two guys.
Yeah, it's two guys, one girl.
This would be two girls and a guy.
Oh, with an Eiffel Tower. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. It's still
There's a
late.
lot of horniness in this chapter.
Yes, there definitely is. But I also thought it was really funny how like Gruntel's like, "Stop! You're making me sick," and then Caruli just awkwardly like, "Well, I'm gonna go back to my carriage now." Like it was just kind of a funny little banterous moment.
Yeah.
And then when Hatan is talking about kind of the reasons why they're down here, just the demons that stalk the wildlands, and just the suspense of this chapter is just so alluring. Like it just the tension keeps building and the suspense keeps building, and it just I think without this mention, I think that everything that comes later on would just be a little too quick.
Yeah. There's definitely good payoff at the end.
Yeah. One of my next thought was Death Knight. I really kind of wonder if we get an explanation for this because it sounds really interesting.
It does, and I know when we first recorded this, I asked you what the opposite of that would be.
A
It
birthday.
would be birthday. I feel like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really know what this Death Knight is, but either.
I mean, I almost kind of imagine it as like a, becoming of a man, or like you're no longer a child, etc., etc.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And then again, kind of this banter between Hatan and Gruntel as Gruntel is observing, Natak and how he's glowering and he's hulking like a hulking youth, and he was clearly being sarcastic when he said that he's beaming with excitement. But Hatan is like, "Yeah, you've got sharp eyes, buddy." And then Gruntel's just like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now I'm traveling with another humorless woman." But I don't think it has anything to do with her not being humorous. It's just even though he was being sarcastic, he's actually right about, him being excited based on his body language.
Do you think he's got big hands too?
I mean, dude, that's his sister. Come on.
Yeah.
But I think that's revealed later on.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
All right. Again, more horniness just spread throughout this fucking chapter.
Definitely probably the most horny chapter we've had in this book series. I don't know how much more you could get without just writing a straight up like smut novel or something.
Hey, I mean, I guess anything's possible in this series, so
True.
I guess we'll see. But I mean, speaking of horniness, Hatan, after Stony like unmounts from her horse and basically told Hatan to ignore Gruntel's terrible jokes, unless, of course, she enjoyed being confused, and like she just bluntly is just like, "Hey, no, I like to kill and ride men." So
Do you think in that order?
maybe. I mean, I think that if she didn't do that in that order, she would be a tennis Gowrie.
I think if she killed them first and then rode them, she'd be a tennis Gowrie.
That's right. But no, I don't think that she likes to do them at the same time.
Yes. And I assume not to the same person.
Right. Yes, exactly. So I don't know if that's just like if that's all Barghast, because we don't really get a lot of who they are as like a race or a culture at this point in time. But I feel like, is this something that is just particular to the Whiteface clan, or is this like all Barghast?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We haven't met a ton of them.
No.
And those that we have met, we haven't like gotten a ton of information on either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those were the only comments that I had on that particular section. I thought that again, it was moving the story forward. There's this like sense of mystery now that you're linked up with these Barghasts. So yeah,
Well, if you're ready to move on, I'll go ahead here.
I'm ready.
All right. The two brothers were miserable things as far as Gruntle could tell, and also pretty dumb. Caruli showed up for a few minutes to share some herbal tea before everyone headed to bed. and he to his fancy carriage. It now fell to Gruntle, as he was alone with Hatan, as the fire died, to try and pry information from her. Gruntle asked how the demons were described. She said they were fast, on 2 legs, and their arms are like blades. Gruntle did not know what the fuck she meant. She shrugged and said bladed and blood iron. Their eyes are hollow pits. They stink of urns in the dark circle, and they are quiet. They make no sound. Gruntle thought to himself, urns in the dark circle? Cremation urns in a chamber barrel? They smell of death. How are their arms blades? Blood iron was a Barghast practice merging weapon and wielder. He asked if anyone had seen one. She said no, they remain in the grasslands. They had not ventured north yet. Gruntle wanted to know who told the stories in that case. The shoulder men had seen them in dreams. The spirits whisper of a threat. The White Clan has chosen a war chief, their father, to await what comes. But he wants to know what the enemy he is facing is, so he sent his children to look. Gruntle asked if their father would lead his army south if Capistan was besieged, because the Cappan lands would be vulnerable to their raids, at least until the Panions were through with their conquest. She said their father had no plans to move south. The Panion War would arrive on their doorstep in time, as the shouldermen had read in the Baradin Blades. Then there shall be war. Gruntle wondered if the demons were advanced soldiers of the Panion forces. Hatan said if that was the case, then they would know it was time for war. For now, though, she wished to ride him. Gruntle thought that it was more likely he would be beaten senseless, but he told her he could not turn down such an offer. She told him to follow her and hurry up. Gruntle said he never hurries. Hatan said the next night she would ride his friend. Gruntle said she already was, in his dreams. Hatan said they both had big hands and that she was in a hurry.
Wow. The more naughtiness.
Very much so. Yeah. No, I guess I, let alone in one chapter, I would not have expected this much in like a book, let alone one chapter. So I don't know.
Right. I don't know. I feel like it's not too much. I mean, I feel like it fits these characters, right? Like it doesn't seem
Yeah.
out.
No, I mean, and like I've read Game of Thrones, and like for how much was in the show, like the books were in some cases more descriptive. So I don't know.
Fair enough. All right. Well, what do you got for me, sir?
The dark urns in the dark circle. I know, like it wasn't capitalized, but it seems like a place to me. I don't know what you thought.
I feel like a dark circle is just like a pentagram of sorts. Like it's yeah, so maybe it is a place. I feel
But
like
it's not like it could be like anywhere though.
right. Yeah, it's just kind of like a something you set up, cremation urns in a circle. I think dark is kind of along the lines of like how one would interpret like dark humor. I think that's what he means by dark here. Just some type of like twisted or mysterious circle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My next thought is, this we get the term shoulderman, and to me, I kind of feel like that must be different than a shaman because, like, I guess I don't know why you'd use 2 different terms for the same thing in like back-to-back sentences, basically. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's something different. Like as a shaman, like somebody who does magic. Is a shoulderman more of like a seer or something?
Or like a priest.
Maybe.
I guess it's hard to say. I know that in Deadhouse Gates we got shoulder woman in the Wiccan.
Did we?
I'm pretty sure that's what we got, right? With the Wiccan clans, the shoulder women.
I guess I honestly don't remember if we did or didn't, but if we did, good catch on that because I certainly did not remember.
Yeah. And from what I always thought is that they were just kind of like I don't know, like the elders of the group, maybe like the wise ones. Yeah, the
Gotcha.
trells. They were called shoulder women in the trells, and they were kind of like I guess I got the sense that they were like priests, or priestess. Not necessarily having magical powers or anything, but yeah. So, but did you catch this whole like blood iron thing? And how it was the it was a Barghast practice of merging weapon and wielder.
Yeah, they're like fused. I don't remember much of the details, but yeah, this seems probably not fun to go through. I don't know.
Not at all. But I guess I'm guessing that the Barghast are not the only one that practices based on what we learn later in this chapter.
Probably, well, or maybe, yeah, it's a different process. I don't know, but something similar, anyways.
Yeah. It almost kind of makes you think that they're related, though, doesn't it?
To some extent, I think so. They're similar.
Yeah. All right. Well,
My last thought here, where Hatan says she wished to ride him. I know she mentioned this before, but I had to read that twice before I realized that was like a sexual advance.
oh, really? I got that right away.
Yeah, it just didn't click. So, yeah, quite forward of her. So,
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, can't turn that down, I guess.
I mean, given the circumstances, right? Like talks of demons, mysterious
Yeah,
things.
if you don't know if you might die at any moment, you might as well go for one last romp any chance you can get. So
Yeah. It's interesting though that, Gruntle kind of brings up like, hey, Capistan is besieged. Like, I'm sure that there's likely to be raids upon, the whole nation of Capan. And it doesn't seem like they're willing to do anything until the shoulder men read the Behedron blades. And then there shall be war. I don't exactly know what Behedron blades. I'm assuming shoulder blades. I know that there are people in this world that read omens off of bones. So I think that they're talking about like shoulder blades.
well, they're like the buffalo or whatever, right?
Right, yeah. So I
I
guess that's my guess there. So
yeah, I'm not sure.
I would imagine that the Barghast, from what we know about Paran, right? Like he's essentially supposed to go, well, Trots really is supposed to go convince the Whiteface clan to join them. So I'm wondering if we'll get interactions of that.
We may.
Yeah. But, I definitely feel like this section is kind of the calm before the storm, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. I'm ready for you to continue on.
All right. Here's my last section. The Barghast range crept down from the north as the day slowly passed. Many of the hills edging the trader's track to Capistan were sacred sites, their summits displaying the inverted tree trunks that were the custom of the Barghast anchoring spirits, or so Hatan had explained. Gruntle admitted that he didn't care much for religious conversations, but he had to admit that he was curious as to why the Barghast would bury trees upside down on the hills. Hatan explained that mortal souls are savage things, and many must be held down to keep them from ill wandering. That was the reason the oaks were brought down from the north, and the shoulder men carved magic into their trunks. The one to be buried is pinned beneath a tree. Spirits are drawn as well, to be guardians, and other traps are placed along the edges. Sometimes souls do escape, imprisoned by one of the traps, yet able to travel the land. Those that return to the lands they once came are destroyed, so they have learned to stay away. Sometimes a stick snare retains a loyalty to its mortal kin and will send dreams to tell us of danger. Gruntle asked what exactly a stick snare meant, and was it one of those stick snares that sent the dreams of demons? Hatan said yes, and other spirits, and so many spirits sought to reach them. Gruntle thought to himself that he understood the accuracy of that threat. He scanned the empty land and wondered what was out there. Stony rode 50 paces ahead and disappeared behind a bend. Gruntle thought to himself that she never listened to his orders, and that she was to stay within sight. Gruntle takes in the positioning of the Barghast brothers, and has a thought about the grease that they covered their bodies in. He recalled the night just past, as it had been a challenge to work around, but he had figured it out. A shout from Gafal was heard. At the same time as the shout, Stony reappeared. The slow canter she held eased the captain a bit as she rode closer, but he could tell that Gafal and Stony had spotted something ahead. Stony reined in and said that Boshelin's carriage is ahead, and it's been damaged. Gruntle asked if she saw anyone still standing. She replied that it was just the oxen, but she did not see any bodies. Hatan faced her brother and waved a few dozen hand gestures and drew forth her lance. Kafal went forward, dropping down from view. Gruntle told everyone to arm themselves. Rounding the hill, they saw that the trail opened out, the land flattening out on both sides. 40 paces up was Beauchelin and Corboral's carriage on its side, and the rear spoke entirely torn off. Swaths of scorched ground stretched out from the carriage, the air reeking of sorcery. A low mound just beyond had been blasted open. The inverted tree it had contained was all torn up and shattered. Kafal cautiously approached the mound. Natak ran up next to his sister and said that something was loose. Tatan said it was still close and for Natak to flank his brother. Gruntle asked if a spirit had broken free of its barrow. Drawing a hooked blade sword, the Barghast woman approached the carriage. The captain followed. Stony trotted back to take a defensive position beside Caruli's carriage. A savage hole had been cut into the carriage's side, the edges of the hole revealed to be from sword cuts, though larger than any blade Gruntle had ever seen. He climbed up to see inside, half dreading what he might find. It was empty, no bodies. The padding inside the carriage had been ripped to shreds. 2 large trunks that had been bolted to the floor had been ripped loose. Their lids were open and their contents spilled. One of the trunks contained flat slabs of slate, now shattered, on which held mysterious symbols that had been etched. It was the other trunk that made Gruntle close to gagging. A mass of blood-soaked organs all joined together to form a familiar shape. He sensed that when it had been alive, most recently, it had been human-shaped, though no more than knee-high when standing on its boneless, pod-like appendages. Gruntle thought to himself that it must be necromancy, but not of the demonic kind. Those organs came from living people, people murdered by a madman. Hatan could be heard asking if they were within. The captain said that it was just wreckage. Harlow called from the bench of Caruli's carriage and said that there was a party coming. 4 figures approached. Gruntle thought to himself that that was them, and there were no losses, but something had hit them hard. The captain muttered that that was them. Hatan asked if he knew these guys. Gruntle said that he only knew one, the guard. Hatan said she didn't like them, and adjusted her grip on her weapon. Gruntle told them to keep their distance and described Beauchelin and Corboral to the female Barghast. Kafal and Natak joined their sister and could be heard explaining that it was taken yesterday, and the wards were unraveled slowly, before the hill was broken open. Gruntle still stood atop the wagon. He watched the 4 approach. Reese and Buke both looked exhausted, while the other 2 looked as if they were out for an evening stroll. They were also armed. Climbing down from the carriage, Gruntle went to meet them. Beauchelin said with a faint smile that it was fortunate they had made better time than them. And since Saltoan, their journey has been anything but peaceful. Gruntle said that he'd gathered as much and looked at Buke, who had appeared at least 10 years older since he'd last seen them. Beauchelin observes that their entourage had expanded since the last time they met, and he was surprised that the Barghast could be found on other continents, calling themselves the same name and practicing the same customs. Beauchelin asked what histories lied buried and now lost in their ignorance. Gruntle said that generally that use of the word buried is figurative, but Beauchelin had meant it literally. Beauchelin shrugged and said that he was plagued by curiosity and they couldn't pass on the opportunity. They never can. As it turned out, the spirit they gathered into their embrace, once a shaman of power, could tell them nothing other than what they already thought. The Barghast were an ancient people and were far more numerous, accomplished seafarers as well. It wasn't a question of a fall from civilized society, but rather an eternal stagnation. The belief system, with all its ancestor worship, was anathema to progress, or so he had concluded based on the evidence. Hatan snarled at the sorcerer. Kafal spoke and asked what they had done with their soul kit. Beauchelin explained that the soul had already escaped the inner bindings, yet fell into the traps. The sorcerer asked if the compassion that offered the semblance of bodies in those traps. Corobroach said that flesh would have suited them much better. Beauchelin smiled and explained that his companion was skilled in such semblages, a discipline that of a lesser interest to him. Gruntle asked what had happened here. Hatan snapped and said that it was simple. They broke into a dark circle, and then a demon attacked. The demons, her and her two brothers were there to hunt, and these men somehow managed to elude it. Boshalin tells her that she is wrong and explains that the creature had attacked them was not a demon. They could take his word on it, as demons are entities he happens to know a lot about. Boshalin reveals more of the tale and explains that they were viciously attacked while they were preoccupied with the Barghast barrow. If not for Buke alerting them, they might have caused more damage. Gruntle cut in and said that it wasn't a demon, then what was it? Boshalin said that this was a question not so easily answered. It was undead, commanded by a distant master, and a formidable in the extreme. Corbel and Boshalin saw the inevitable unleashing the full force of their servants to fend the apparition off. Nor did the pursuit of them yield any profit. The loss of many of their servants had occurred, as two more of the undead hunters had appeared. While the trio had been driven off, the reprieve is only temporary. They will attack again, and if their numbers increase, they might as well be tested. Or they might as well all be tested. Gruntle said if he could, he would like to speak privately with his master and Hatan. Boshalin said by all means, and told Corbel and the rest of his companions to check out the wreckage of their carriage. Taking Hatan's arm, he pulled her towards Caruli's carriage. The two brothers followed. Hatan hissed, saying that they have enslaved their soulkin and they must die. Gruntle said that she would die before she could even get close. Gruntle tells her that Boshalin and Corbel were necromancers. Boshalin is into demonic summoning, and Corbel practices the art of the undead. Hood cursed and foul. He asks her if she understands him, and tells her to not even try it. Caruli's voice emerged and said that even more importantly, very soon, he fears they will have a need for these terrible men and their powers. Gruntle asked if his master knew of these undead hunters. There was a long pause before Caruli answered. He said that he had his suspicions, and that these undead were spinning power across the land from which they can sense any tremor, and they cannot pass undetected. Stoney snapped and said that they should just turn around before it's too late. Caruli said that it was already too late. These undead servants continued across the river from the Southlands, all in service to the Panian Seer. He believes there are more of them behind us, near Saltoan. Gruntle curses inside his head at hearing this. Caruli said that they must fashion a temporary alliance with these necromancers, until at least they reach Capistan. Hatan said that they will not travel with those men. Gruntle said that he thinks they don't really have a choice. What's the point of finding these undead creatures just to be ripped to shreds? Hatan asked the captain if he thought they came unprepared for such a battle. Caruli spoke and said that it would be worthless if they drew the attention of the Panian Seer. He then asked Gruntle how long before they'd reach Capistan. Inside his head, the captain said that Caruli knew already just how long it would take. Gruntle, nevertheless, said 4 days. Caruli says that he understands their outrage as to what they did, but surely they can keep the pace for that brief length of time. Keep the peace for that brief length of time. Hatan spat and turned away, saying that if it was needed, then very well. Gruntle returned to Boshalin. The two sorcerers were crouched down by their axle. A wave of melted metal touched his senses. Boshalin said that their repairs will not take long. Gruntle acknowledged this and asked if there were 3 of the undead out there, how far away were they? Boshalin says that their small shaman keeps pace with the hunters, and they are less than a league away. He explains, though, that if the undead creatures will it, they can cover that distance quickly and with only a little warning, but enough of a warning to muster a defense. The captain asked why they were traveling to Capistan. Boshalin said that there wasn't a particular reason. They are wanderers. Upon arriving on the west side of the continent, they set their sights on traveling to the east side. Gruntle looked up and caught the eye of Buke. A slight head nod drew the man off to one side. The captain told Buke that he was in trouble. Buke scowled and said nothing, but Gruntle could see the truth in his eyes. Gruntle told the man that when they reached Capistan, to take his earnings and head for the hills. He saw that what was in the carriage. They'll kill Buke if he tries anything. The man grinned and asked if they'd even make it to Capistan. He said, "Surprise, motherfucker. We won't live to see the next dawn." He continued on to explain to Gruntle that the captain wouldn't believe what his masters unleashed. A nightmare group of servants, guardians, spirit slayers, and even their own powers. That group is shredded to bits all across the plain. He saw demons cut to smithereens. Buke tells Gruntle that these men are insane, and poor Mancy's been with them for 3 years. The stories he's told me, Buke then shuddered. Gruntle puts it together that Mancy meant Emancipor Reese. Gruntle asked about where the cat went. Buke chuckled and said that it ran off with all the horses after the bandits attacked them. Ran off once he was done removing the cat from the back of Mancy's back, which was where it jumped when all the Warrens were going off. What a long one, dude.
Yeah, that was.
So I think that this small shaman that they're talking about is potentially the shaman from the barrow, the Bargas barrow, is what I kind of imagined. I don't know if because these are spirits that are giving visions to the Bargast clan. So my guess is that Boshalan and Corporal Broach wanted to enslave the shaman, so because it knew what it looked, because they knew what these undead warriors looked like.
I think you're onto something, but I still think there's something with that cat.
Yeah.
I think the cat's the stick snare, and their little shaman's just some little creation they put together.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, when Corporal talks about, so I think the stick snare, I imagine, is essentially kind of like a hairlock situation where it's just an amalgamation of like sticks and cloth and fabric for the spirits to attach itself to. And maybe you and I are both right. Maybe because what Corporal says is that flesh would have suited them much better. Well, the cat is flesh, right? So maybe what happened is they put the Bargas shaman in the cat.
Could be. Yeah, because I mean, in my last section, I remember they do say that the stick snares return, and that's right when the cat shows back up.
Yeah. So I think in the first time we recorded this, we really couldn't make heads or tails of that. But I feel like this time, now that we've maybe had some time to process this chapter and we're reading it again and summarizing it again, that I think they're one and the same. I think the small shaman is a combination of the cat and the Bargas shaman that they broke loose.
I think I can get on board with.
All right. Well, I mean, we could be stood corrected, but hey, I guess we'll keep going with that in mind until we're told otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I'll allow it.
You'll allow it. All right.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. The other thing that I thought was just really fucked up is just this human-shaped knee high when standing in its boneless pod-like appendages, just the blood-soaked organs that Gruntle found in one of the upturned trunks. I just like, what is he just Frankensteining something of their own creation? Is he just taking random body parts and like building them together, or like what is he doing exactly?
I don't know,
Because
it is suspicious.
I mean, it sounds like Boshalan studies demons, right? And Corporal just practices bringing things dead to life, is kind of how it seems to be explained in this section.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. They both have their kind of, and maybe that's why they work together. They both have their little specialty, I guess.
Right, like maybe Boshalan, maybe they're like the Winchester brothers. They just go seeking out. You've seen Supernatural, right?
Nope.
Oh, okay. You should check it out. It's a good show. Up until like after.
You said Winchester brothers, and I'm like thinking, are like these the guys who made the Winchester guns or what?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're not going to get this reference, but I mean, basically, you got two brothers that like seek out evil entities. It's
Perhaps
yeah,
supernatural entities.
right. Yes.
See, I'm very perceptive.
Yeah.
Very perceptive.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a good show. You should check it out.
I think I had it on my like Netflix queue at one point. I don't know if it's still on there, but
Yeah, it's a little long-winded to watch every freaking season, but I would say up till like season 5, everything is great. And then after that, it's like spotty. Things are definitely good here. And then there's just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? So, but it was one of those shows that was just extremely popular. So I think that they were just trying to milk it for all it's worth, you know?
That's what they generally seem to do, right?
Yeah. But anyway,
Well, they fuck it up.
yeah. But the organs that Gruntle comes across in this trunk, these are definitely the dead people that have been, you know, in the last 4 days in Saltoan that there were killings going on. These are the people that were killed. Corporal has them. Boschlane and
Oh,
Corporal
yeah,
have
for
them in
sure.
this fucking trunk. So, you know, and, you know, at the end of section 2, when Gruntle's thinking about Buke's kind of, what do you call it, confession about seeing Corporal kill, like all of that ties nicely together and it makes a lot of sense to me.
I don't have anything to add.
Fair enough. All right. I thought it was cool that we got, you know, again, a little bit of a history on the Barghast. I mean, I think that Boschlane is being a little bit of an asshole here, but it was still cool to kind of have him explain. And I think that potentially what they were doing is they were, you know, destroying the barrow to release the shaman so that they could get knowledge of the Barghast. And I think that it was something that they really couldn't tell him. They couldn't tell the pair anything that they didn't already know. But, you know, it's interesting, and it's explained that the Barghast were ancient people, accomplished seafarers. So, you know, they were crossing continents, right? And it kind of seems that they still practice this like ancestor worship, which doesn't allow them to progress as a society. And I think that Boschlane is saying that that is essentially their downfall. Being an asshole about it, but that's essentially what he's saying.
Well, not everybody's a nice guy.
No, definitely not. But I kind of wonder how much the Barghast will play a role in some of these earlier visions. I would imagine that the prologue is not just a one-time thing, and that there will be other parts of this book or even the next 7 books where we get more of a history, you know, with like the Fork Rule Sail, the Kachain Chamal, the First Empire, that kind of stuff. Things that were kind of talked the Dead House Gates a lot.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. So I just wonder how much, if they are such an ancient people, how much influence they're going to have on things, or if they will be involved in some way, shape, or form.
I guess I don't know. I mean, on a little different note, the one thing I thought was cool was, I know somewhere along the way, Boschlane or Corporal, they say that, you know, it was interesting that even on a different continent, they use the same name and that type of thing. And then we find out that they're good at sailing and stuff. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, definitely is cool. It's interesting. Makes me just think more about it, I guess.
For sure.
We already talked about the traps, the stick snares. We already talked about Corporal liking to play with things that are dead. We talked about Boschlane.
He's the weird kid.
Yep. Talked about Boschlane and his knowledge of demons and how he likes to study them. And that's what I'm imagining was in the other trunk with like the broken stone slabs that had like mysterious etchings in them. Is that they were probably like tomes of demons, like a book of demons type of thing.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I guess I hadn't thought of that, but yeah.
The other thing, these undead creatures, right? It was said that they were commanded by a distant master. So they're definitely controlled by someone or something. And I just kind of wonder where this is going to take us. You know, I think that there was mention that they were commanded by the Panian Seer. I think that happens later on in this section. Yeah, all in service to the Panian Seer. So, but again, is that something that Karuli knows, or is that just him speculating?
I don't know.
Like, he seems to have
not
too
sure.
much knowledge about the Panian Domain.
He's suspicious.
Do you think he's an ex-Panian?
I'm not sure. Just because I wonder how you would escape that.
Yeah, I mean,
I imagine that would be hard to do. Not that, I mean, nothing's really impossible, right? So I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it could be possible.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show you kind of get a sense of how powerful Corporal and Boschelane are in this section because, they're explaining how they had to unleash the full force of their servants. And then, Buke at the end is just like naming off all of these things, that they mustered. And it's just really cool to kind of think about. And it gives kind of an intensity as to how these undead creatures, how strong they really are.
Well, I mean, we've heard how fast and quiet they are, and yeah.
Yeah. And then when Caruli is talking about how he fears that they will have a need to travel with Boschelane and Corporal, and is this just like a helpless safe passage? Or is Caruli hiding and holding back something from them? Like, what exactly is needed from a guy who studies demons and a guy who like reanimates the dead?
I mean, they're strong in magic, so
You really do you think it is just a safe passage thing, or do you think it's something more?
I guess I don't know. I think for the time being, it's just a safe passage thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it turns into something more than that, but I mean, right now, I think that's just kind of what it is.
Do you think that it's possible that as a payment for Buke service, they'll reanimate his dead family?
Oh, damn. I feel like that's probably too far gone. I think it'd be pretty fucked up if they had his family, the bodies. I'm going to say no, but it is an interesting thought.
Okay.
But even if they did, like, would you want that? I wouldn't.
No, I mean, not at all. But I mean, yeah, I guess I don't. Buke doesn't seem to really have the greatest mindset at this point. And also, he's scared shitless, right? Like,
Yeah.
I could just imagine the range of emotions for all these characters in this whole fucking chapter. Just the suspense, the like, what the fuck is going on? Just the random outbursts of like horniness and fucking and it's just it seems like it's confusing. Like I would be confused as fuck in this situation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And things just keep getting worse and worse, right? They come across a bunch of scorched bodies on the road and they're like, oh, well, what happened here? Oh, okay, all right. And then, they meet up with the Barghast and they talk about demons and like their burying rituals. And it's just kind of like, well, damn, that's interesting. It just never ends, man.
Things rarely get better before they get worse.
Yeah. But outside of that, those were my really big topics for that pretty long section there.
That was a pretty long section. I think that was the longest one in this chapter, wasn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Well, you did a good job, man.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Ready to take her home?
We'll bring it home here and hope she saves, huh? I hope I didn't jinx it.
It'll be fine.
I trust you. That was just kind of a one-off thing before, so. All right. Here we go. The journey had resumed once the repairs on the carriage were completed. Stoney took point while Kafal and Natak flanked. Reese guided the carriage while the two sorcerers slept inside. Buke and Gruntle walked a few paces ahead of the carriage in mostly silence. That was until Gruntle sighed and said that there were people who didn't want to see him, or Buke, dead. They see him wasting away, and it pains them because they actually care. Buke said guilt had been a good weapon for a long time, but it's not good enough anymore. If he chooses to care, he had best swallow that pain because he doesn't give a damn about himself. Gruntle asked, what about Stoney? Buke said it's worth more than her getting tangled in his mess and that he's not interested in being saved. So tell her that. Gruntle said he could tell her himself, and when she punched him in the mouth, don't forget that he told him so. He won't deliver his messages of self-pity. He told Gruntle to back off. He would hurt him real bad before he had a chance to use his swords on him. Gruntle said that was rich. To get one of his few remaining friends to kill him. It isn't actually self-pity, is it? And he isn't obsessing over the tragic deaths of his family. He's obsessed with himself. His guilt is a rising tide, and his ego is a levee. All he can keep doing is placing another brick and building it higher so he can look down at them from above. Buke went white and was shaking. He asked if that's what he thought, then why does he call him friend? Gruntle wondered to himself why that was the case. When he spoke, he said they had known each other for a long time and never crossed swords. Gruntle had more thoughts that he kept to himself. That Buke was able to quit drinking. It only took the deaths of his family to do it, while he had not been able to quit and feared he may face the same outcome. Buke said that wasn't much. Gruntle didn't answer, but thought that they were two of the same, and if Buke looked past his ego, he'd see the same thing pretty quick. Buke said the sun was almost down, and they mostly come out at night. That's when they'll attack. Gruntle asked how they were to defend against them. Buke said, "You can't. It's like chopping into wood. They're that damn fast." He told Gruntle they were all as good as dead. Bauschlein and Corbel, they don't have much left in the tank. Gruntle said Curly is a mage. Well, maybe he's like a priest. Buke said he hoped his god turned a favorable eye towards them. Gruntle thought those odds were slim. They made camp as the sun set behind them. Supper was made over a small fire by Harlow while all the mages stayed in their carriages. After supper was done, Hitan told Harlow to follow her quickly. Gruntle nearly spit out his wine and told Harlow to do as he was bid. Harlow figured out what was going on as Hitan drug him off into the dark. Stony wondered what was going on, but no man gave an answer. She turned to Gruntle and hissed that this is an outrage. She didn't want to listen to those disgusting noises coming from the grasses. Gruntle said given the circumstances, it made sense. Stony wasn't worried about that. It was that she, or Hitan, had chosen Harlow, and it made her sick. She said to look around the fire. An uncultured and trashy woman wouldn't be able to resist him, and even Buke was worth a snake fight or three. But Harlow? He's a big dumb ape as far as she was concerned. Gruntle said he had big hands. Stony had the realization that Gruntle had been with her last night. She told him not to deny it. Gruntle asked how any warm-blooded man was supposed to resist. Stony tried to take Buke to bed, but he shut her down. Kafal smiled and said to take Natak. Gruntle said he had big hands too. Stony told him to shut up. Gruntle told her to go into the other direction, as she wouldn't want to trip over anything. After they left, Gruntle told Buke he was a fool. Reese lamented that they only had 2 more nights. Gruntle said they weren't dead yet, and maybe they had Open's luck looking down on them. He asked Reese how he got his job. Reese said it was a long story, but this job offered travel, and his wife, well, he trailed off. Gruntle asked if he was choosing the lesser of 2 evils. Reese said as much. Gruntle wanted to know if he regretted it now. Reese said he hadn't said that either. They heard a yowl from the grass, and Gruntle asked who made that noise. Reese said it was none of them. His cat had come back. Moments later, Bauschlein appeared, saying their stick snare had returned and it would be best to get the others back. He said the best bet was to try and hamstring the enemy and stay low. They liked horizontal cuts. Gruntle said they'd be lucky to see anything in this dark. Corbel cast light in a circle, pushing their vision out 30 paces or so. When the others returned, Gruntle said he assumed she didn't have enough time. She told Gruntle to be more forgiving. It was the boy's first time, and that it was a shame. He had potential. The 3 Barghast had gathered together, and Hitan had tied them together. They had a row of lances at their feet, and Atog handed out double-bladed axes. Gruntle had Karuli next to him. He told Gruntle that he could offer limited protection and to stay close, along with Harlow and Stony. Focus on defense. Gruntle drew his swords. Harlow was on his left with his 2-handed sword, and Stony to his right with her rapier. He was worried for her the most. He told her to stay back a step, and she told him to quit being so fucking stupid. He said he wasn't being chivalrous. Poking tiny holes into the undead wouldn't be effective. She said they just have to wait and see. He ordered her to stay close to Karuli and guard him. Gruntle asked Karuli who his god was. If he called upon him, or her, what could they expect? In truth, Karuli didn't know. His god was elder and had been awoken from thousands of years of sleep. Gruntle only stared, thinking the elder gods were abandoned because of their ferocity, or so he thought. He watched Karuli draw a small blade, and he cut into his left palm. Blood dripping to the grass below. The air suddenly smelled like a slaughterhouse. A small man-shaped collection of sticks, twigs, and twine came into the circle of light. They trailed sorcery like smoke. Gruntle could feel vibrations in the earth, steady like war horses, maybe more like giants. At least 5 pairs, maybe more. Shapes appeared and disappeared from sight as the creatures spread out. The chant the Barghest had going stopped. They faced east as the fog started to shroud them. Gruntle knew they would be completely enveloped. It was silent. Gruntle could feel his heart beating. He tried to look into the dark, but could see nothing. He thought about the soldier's life, the soldier's moment right before battle, standing with the others, facing the same threat, yet feeling alone with the sense that all that you are is about to be erased. The creatures emerged, flat faces filled with fangs and skin pale like a snake, standing twice the height of a man, blades fused to their wrists, but no hands were visible. Gruntle knew taking a hit from one of these would be death. They were reptilian, standing on 2 legs like a flightless bird balanced by a long tail. They wore ragtag armor. Karuli said they were Kachain Shamal. These ones were Kel hunters, firstborn of every brood, the matron's own children, and even this was a fading memory to the elder gods. Gruntle wanted to know what they were waiting for. They were uneasy. The Barghest sorcery was unknown to their master. Gruntle didn't believe it. He asked if the Panian seer commanded these things. The 5 hunters attacked. 3 of them headed for the Barghest. The other 2 went for Bauchelane and Corbel Broach. As they neared the Barghest, the lances reached out, hitting the lead hunter. Sorcery tearing through it. Its head wobbled on top of its shattered neck and collapsed even as its 2 siblings swept to the side and vanished inside the cloud. The sound of iron on iron sang from within the cloud. The other 2 were encapsulated within black magic before they had managed 2 strides, though they drove through it to face the mages who had swords streaming with smoke. Harlow screamed, and they turned to face a 6th creature that was behind them, heading straight for Karuli. This one was different, as its skin had intricate markings and a dorsal ridge of spikes running down its spine. Gruntle threw a shoulder into Karuli and pushed him out of the way. Keeping low, he was able to block the horizontal attack. Though he heard it, more than felt it, his wrist snapped, shattered and broken. The hunter's other blade would have gotten him if not for Harlow's sword blocking it. Both weapons shattered. Harlow staggered off, spraying blood from wounds on his chest and face. Gruntle was hit by a taloned, 3-toed foot, sending him up in the air. His head hurt like hell as it collided with the hunter's jaw, sending its head up with a crunching sound. Stunned, and with the air knocked out of him, he fell to the ground. Immediately, he was crushed by a huge weight, claws puncturing his armor to pierce his flesh. He felt himself being dragged across the ground, his mouth filled with blood, and the world grew dark around him. He felt the talons shudder as if they were being repeatedly hit. Gruntle was lifted into the air and thrown. He landed and skidded into a broken carriage wheel. He knew he was dying. He could feel it. He forced himself to keep his eyes open. Desperate for one last look at the world, and wondered why it couldn't have been sudden and instant. Why must he linger? Even the pain was gone. Why not awareness instead? Why must he be tortured, knowing what he's about to face? He heard a scream and recognized it as the sound of someone dying. He thought they should scream their defiance, their terror and rage, even as the web closes in. Waves of sound out into the mortal world, one last time. The scream stopped and it was silent, all save for his own heartbeat. He knew his eyes were open, so either the light cast spell had failed, or he had found his own darkness. His stumbling heartbeat grew fainter and fainter.
Here we did. We did it for a second time.
We did. Pretty straightforward section for the most part, and definitely an interesting battle scene.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I guess just kind of starting from the top. I made an Aliens reference here. They mostly come out at night. I just couldn't help myself.
No worries. I remember from last time.
I thought it was interesting, when Hitan was dragging Harlow off and Stoney wondered what was going on, but no man would give an answer. I thought it was interesting that it said no man, instead of, nobody else.
Right.
So I feel like it's kind of like a bros before hoes type thing or something like that.
Probably for sure. What I want to kind of talk about is just what happened a little bit earlier on in the section with just Gruntle and Buke's conversation, right? Like Buke is clearly in this mindset of like the end is here. Like I'm about to go, so like fuck everybody else, right? And it's just kind of an interesting mentality.
Yeah, because I mean, it does a lot of. I mean, it's felt like he doesn't give a shit, but I mean, maybe he kind of does. I don't know. It is interesting.
I feel like it's one of those things where like he's wanted this for so long and maybe now he's still kind of holding up that wall, but inside he's scared shitless for it to happen.
I mean, wouldn't you be though? I mean,
Oh, for sure.
I think anybody would really like. I mean, however dead set you are on it, like it'd still be a scary thing to just not be anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it was a pretty deep conversation. And even Gruntle gets kind of mad at him, but I don't know. I feel bad for Buke, but at the same time, I kind of don't too. I don't know. It's complicated, I guess.
I mean, no, it makes sense, but yeah, I could just the beginning of the section is just it's very emotional, especially with
It
Grunt's
is.
Buke's conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. Kitty comes back. I think, I don't know, I kind of felt like Kitty was bait a little bit for these things. But now that I think about it, I don't know. Was it really? Was it just kind of dumb luck? Because these things are undead. I mean, they don't really need to eat. They're going to want to kill a little cat that they ran across. Unless it's like you said, where it's, fuck, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, like fused with another, like, being or something.
I mean, maybe now that you've read this section, I'm maybe recanting that a little bit because, a small man shaped collection of sticks, twigs, and twine. And I think I made a comment that I think this is the Bargash shaman. So I think that Corbel in their conversation earlier was just saying that, like, hey, flesh is better than like sticks, twigs, and twine. They're much better suited for souls. But it's possible that the cat and the small man-shaped collection of sticks, they're both stick snares, right?
I'm hanging on to it hard, and I don't know why, but I think there's something there with the cat.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see. I mean, with everything that we went through with Moby, in the last two books, I can definitely see that there's probably something going on with this cat. I mean, it sounds like it's Risa's cat. What
Yeah.
exactly that means, I don't know.
What if it's his wife somehow?
I was just thinking that. Like, what if it's his...
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I wonder if we'll get any sort of payoff.
I'm sure.
That would be something. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why he's with them. He wants them to like change him back, but they got to like travel the world to get their ingredients for the spell or potion or some shit.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
I feel like we'll probably get a little bit of a better history when we read the novellas with the Emancipatories. So,
I wonder if he'll be in them or if it'll, I don't know. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't.
I mean, because I have a feeling, and I forgot to mention this, but in my last section, when Buke is telling Gruntle about the stories that Emancipator Reese has told him over his travels with the pair over the last 3 years. So I'm guessing that this is maybe some of the novellas that we'll see, because I think chronologically a couple of them happened before this book.
Yeah. But I mean, at least now we'll kind of like, we'll know who, like, more about who they are and that type of
Right.
thing.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get to that when we're done with this book. I feel like it'll be a quick little read. Would imagine that it would maybe take us maybe 3 months to get through.
If that long, I mean, I don't know. We'll see what it's like. Maybe it's another deal where we can knock out 2 chapters at a time or something.
Well, I don't even know if there are chapters. I think it's just like
Oh, shit, really? Well, fuck, I don't know then. Yeah, we'll just have to break it up into chunks.
Right. I mean, we could have a 12-hour episode. Just kidding.
Oh boy. You're ambitious.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
Our creatures are, they're fucking dinosaurs with sword arms. I feel
Velociraptor,
like it's
right? Yeah.
yeah. I feel like Doctor Evil should be around somewhere. It's sharks with freaking laser beams, but it's
Right.
dinosaurs with sword arms.
It's kind of an unsightly vision, I mean, like maybe you could imagine them maybe being a little goofy looking, but just based on what we know about how these guys kill, I don't get goofy,
Yeah,
like a fucked up vibe.
I don't know. I get like terrifying because I think like what's like the average height for a man? I guess I don't know about Malazan, but like in our real world, what isn't like the average height for a guy like 5'9" or something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, even just for easy math, if you round it up to 6 foot, you got a fucking like 12-foot dinosaur with like how long are sword arms? Like it's got two 6-foot swords or something, off the front of it that it's just gonna chop your goddamn head off with. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, that's that's a scary image, man.
And then you got to try to fight it.
Right. Numbers of
Fuck
them.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ain't just one. Yeah, count me out.
I would just jump horizontal slash and just take my head off.
Jump into it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get this over with. Like I'm not
Right.
winning. Fuck it.
Exactly.
Well, maybe if you're lucky, it would chop your head off if it didn't want to eat you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Given this, yeah, fair enough.
I guess these ones are undead, so they don't need to eat.
Right, yeah.
You had a thought here, I believe.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Karuli said that, these were Kell hunters, right? Firstborn of every brood, the matron's own children. And even this was a fading memory to the elder gods. So my guess is that this is what was released after the ice melted at Morn. So
The matron?
I think that when Kalava put the two Jaghut children into the rent, it released whoever is the matron, right? Whoever is controlling. Maybe the Panian Seer is the matron.
Or somehow got the matron under their control. I don't know.
Some way, shape, or form, yeah.
Yeah, possible. My last two thoughts here come like in the last paragraph or so, but Gruntle, he hears waves of sound out into the mortal world one last time. I like that, that continues on. The scream stopped and it was silent, all save for his own heartbeat. The whole thing, just dark and kind of eerie.
Right.
He's either he knows he's in the dark, so either the spell failed or he's at the end of his life. Which I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Do you think he's really dead or going to die?
So.
Do you think he's going to be saved here in the 11th hour?
I think that he is just unconscious. He did hit his head pretty hard. So I think that he's just unconscious at this point.
You don't think he's bleeding out or anything after being crushed and claws digging punching through his armor into his skin?
I mean, I'm sure that he's bleeding. I don't know if he's bleeding out, but maybe that's what caused him to go unconscious. Yeah. I guess this is definitely a big cliffhanger, and I hope soon we get the next steps here.
I think Corbel or Bauschlane will save him somehow, or they're gonna fucking use him as a meat wagon. I don't know.
Do you think they'll reanimate him? Do you think they'll end up as their servants?
I don't know. But like you said, I hope I don't have to wait too long to find out.
Right. Yeah, me neither. Who do you think the scream is coming from? You think Buke has finally got what he wanted?
I'm not sure. I don't know. 'Cause, it's not even specific if it's a male or female scream. So, right. I don't know.
And also, what about the Barghast? Are they dead too?
I don't think all of them are. But I don't know which ones survived. Maybe they all do. Maybe one or two of them die, but I don't think all of them do.
Do you think
if any?
Do you think that their father will eventually hear about this and be forced into war? Because what if they do all die? I mean, I would want to seek vengeance, right? Like my fucking 3 kids just got slaughtered by these fucking things.
I'm not sure. I don't I don't know what my feelings tell me on that. I don't know.
You gotta read some Behedron's bones to figure it out.
Yeah, I got to read on and find out. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
I'm conflicted on that.
Yeah, I am too. I'm very curious to see how this ends or how this continues on. Definitely a huge giant cliffhanger.
Probably one of the biggest ones we've come across, I feel like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So far in this book, what's really abstract to me is that, we're 200 some pages in already.
Yeah, we are. We're getting there.
Yeah. I guess what a chapter. It's almost kind of nice doing it twice. I will never do it again. But
Not
I
if we
felt
don't
like
have to.
it went smoother this time than I did last time.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say. I thought it was a really good chapter. It was very spooky, terrific in the actual meaning of the word.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it definitely was a bang at the end for that sub book. So we already recorded our wrap up, which I guess wasn't so much of a wrap up as it was kind of more of a conversation about just, Malazan as a whole and their experience, Jeff and Lana's experience with it so far.
Yeah,
But it was fun to talk to them, and I'm excited to keep going here.
for sure.
But it might be a little bit until we get to record another Malazan episode. So it's November 7th today, November 9th. So in a couple of days here, I'll be heading to North Carolina for kind of a long weekend, and then we get home and I work a couple days, and then I go to Miami, and then it's fucking Thanksgiving and the end of the month already. So yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have a little break in recording here for a little bit anyways, but
yeah, but we've got plenty of episodes in the bank. For our audience, you guys won't notice anything outside of this little 2-week break that I've taken from editing. I just need a little bit of time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't blame you at all for that. I mean, yeah, unless you've been gone like on a work trip, or when you were, moving. I mean, we really haven't taken an extended break, and even this is not much of one. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. So, I think the last thing I would have here is before we started recording tonight, I just put a tweet out. I don't know if you saw it, but that we were re-recording this episode, and if anybody wanted a shout out just because, that they should reply. And Jan, just for you, just because you replied. So there you go.
All right. Way to go, Jan.
Yep. So I guess we'll read on here, and we'll figure out when we can record again. I know this next chapter is a pretty big one, so we'll have to see how it breaks down.
Yes. Hopefully it's not another 6-hour episode.
That would be something. It would be a lot of content for this book. So
Yeah.
not that I'm against it, but yeah, I think we'd have to split that up again into a couple days.
Yeah. Well, I feel like just based on this chapter alone, I think that the way it's gonna go back to what we can I expect is a bad word, because you can't really expect a whole lot with the way Erickson writes, which is just so beautiful. I think that we're gonna kind of get back into the mysteriousness a bit now that the whole parlay is over, and just what I imagine to be that transition from the end of Gardens of the Moon to this book. I think that now the events are going to start moving forward. And again, not that, what we read and what we've summarized and our episodes up to this point were a bad thing. I mean, I severely enjoyed all of the information and, the new things that are being introduced. But I'm definitely excited to kind of get back to not knowing a lot of things.
Yeah, I think the pace will probably pick up some here too.
What do you say? Should we wrap it?
I think we've said probably about all we have to say.
Beautiful. All right. Well, you, sir, enjoy the rest of your night. Probably gonna
Yep.
spend the next half hour just unwinding and then going to bed.
Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna head to bed here pretty quick too. So I gotta get through one more day of work, and that's about it for work for the month, basically. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for powering through this again with me.
I wouldn't have it any other way, man.
Second time's the charm, right?
Yep. I don't like when you're rolling your eyes or move side eye in there, Justin.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know as soon
Sounds
as it's
good.
done. Confirmed.
All right.
Yeah. All right, sir. Well, great episode. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good night, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's DMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.